This is Geek Gab with your hosts, Dornall and me, Daddy Warpig. We are back. Geek Gab for Saturday, June 27th, 2020. And I can't think of anything snappy to say. This has actually been an okay week as far as I remember, if I ignore the bad stuff, which I'm going to do.
Well, you kind of have to do that, don't you? I mean,
but even the bad stuff we've got isn't as bad as the bad stuff that we've gotten in previous weeks. So there's some good stuff that's happening this week.
Bad stuff's on a downswing. Good stuff's coming up. Good stuff stocks are up.
Feeling bullish about good stuff.
All right.
Cyberpunk 2077, the video game, was delayed by 2 months from September to November, which is bad. I'll admit it, that was bad. That happened this week. That was bad. But they also came out with their first episode of Night City Wire, which was talking about some behind-the-scenes stuff and was just, pretty interesting. So that was good. Now, some select people got a chance to play current builds of the game and do little reviews on YouTube about the game, which is good. None of those people were me, which is bad.
Oh, that's a shame.
So, that's it balances. There's some new Pirates of the Caribbean movies coming out with Johnny Depp in them, so that's good.
Are you sure that's in the good column?
Yeah, just wait till the bad column. I'm not done. You always knew there was something coming. You could feel something coming. You've seen the pattern already. How did you not know there was something else coming? But Margot Robbie is starring in a female-led spin-off of Pirates of the Caribbean, which the studio assures us is not a spin-off. It's an original story set in the Pirates of the Caribbean world that's spinning off from the other Pirates of the Caribbean movies, but it's not a spin-off. Female-led, Margot Robbie, written by the same lady who wrote Birds of Prey.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Oh, goodness.
Without Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
Which is bad.
Bad.
So, you see what I'm saying here?
I'm picking up what's putting down.
Bad stuff. I'm trying to think. Yeah. Oh, there's probably some other big news. Oh yeah, all the Cyberpunk 2077 news has knocked news of that other bad game right out of the headlines for the most part, which is good. And I don't even have a bad point for that. That's just the good thing. It came, people laughed at it. The guy who wrote the game, the director of the game, Neil Druckmann, is so butthurt over the reception of his game. He's actually using animators and mocap actors to make memes out of characters in his game.
Oh my God.
You know the guy who taps his head in the meme about, well, you can't do this.
Right, sure.
Yeah, they can't shoot you if you shoot yourself. That guy. They mocapped that and made Ellie doing that exact same thing. That's how butthurt he is he's trying to get back at people by making memes.
And he's taking it out on his employees.
And then he's trying to taunt people on Twitter with this. Now, I count that as a good thing, you see? So that's good. That's why I'm saying good is winning. So that's two goods right there.
Yeah.
Hilarious when a guy who just made a game is so angry that people don't think it's sheer genius. I'm interested. I actually want that to go on. I want to see what other kind of memes he can come up with. I mean, what other memes is it possible? Is he going to, pop up the "Why You Always Lying" guy? Because I like the "Why You Always Lying" guy. Or just do it. Just do it.
That'd be great.
Don't let your dreams be dreams. That would be awesome to see, like Joel do or something, or the It's Man golfer to do. I don't know. Are there any, meme videos that would be good? I would kill to see something like that.
Well, what's
All
the
right.
rating on this one? Because all I can think of is somebody needs to reply to him with "It smells like bitch in here," but
Yeah. Wow. And you know that there's got to be more than one person worked on the project who either in private amongst themselves or to him were like, this is a bad idea, right? Like there has to be someone in there who isn't a yes man, just worried for his job, going, "Hey, are you sure we want this character, Doctor? Do we want all this? Do we want any of this?"
It's just hilarious. I'm
it's
sorry.
like the old thing of when the dungeon master looks at you and say, "Are you sure you want to do that?" Right?
Yeah. So, by the way, how was your week? That was my week, is collecting news and stuff. And I'm also getting prepared for a future show. I've been playing my way through all the Wolfenstein games that I haven't played through before. So that's Wolfenstein, the new Colossus, and I'm actually playing through Wolfenstein Youngblood.
Well, then you and me need to have a special session. Have you had a chance to play Enemy Territory yet?
No.
Wow, it's the best Wolfenstein. You'd hate it.
Is that part of the new continuity?
It is not. It is a multiplayer. Okay. It is a multiplayer game made with the Return to Castle Wolfenstein game.
Oh,
it's an old role-based, team-based shooter, and it's hilarious.
I'm playing through. There have been 4 games now in the new continuity. The new Grim Dark, going to a concentration camp, and all that continuity, and so. They're up to the 1980s in the latest one. I'm playing it, and so I'm going to do a review on some show coming up.
That sounds good.
So I'm working hard.
We're actually doing Age of Mythology. We just doing a flashback, and we're all going back and doing that one again.
That was a great game. I enjoyed that game. I never got a chance to finish it because bad things happened in my life, and I was playing it.
I'm sensing a pattern.
But yeah, I liked that game a lot. It was a lot of fun. So, Dornall, how was your week?
Oh, my week is good. Speaking of Dungeon Masters, we're still playing online a lot and giving our game master no end to the grief. We're playing on Roll20, which is fantastic tool for frustrating everybody at the table.
Mm.
And every single week he says something along the lines of, "You guys never do what I think you're going to do." Every time.
Yep, that's a good table. When they're always surprising you, that's a very good table.
I tried to break it to him softly. We're gonna try to lead him into. We're gonna try to help with that problem. And I said, maybe is there a way you can prepare differently or prep different stuff so that it's not so much of a problem for you when we do that? Well, it's a work in progress, but the game is a ton of fun.
Oh, good.
He's a really good. He's on the storyteller side of the spectrum. He's a really good. He'll take whatever nonsense the players are up to and try to whip it into a fun narrative and everything. And he's deliberately made the world dangerous and difficult, and that's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Exciting.
I found something out today. Sorry.
You're allowed.
People thought this was a joke, even though I said it wasn't a joke. Online. Female hurricanes have killed 5 times as many people as male hurricanes.
That's right.
Tons of fun.
Well, you know what? You know why they're called they're all female hurricanes, right? I mean, have you ever heard of a himicane? Whoa, tough crowd. All right, moving on, guys.
I'm lost. No, I'm serious though. Somebody did a study of all the hurricanes. This is actually peer-reviewed, published study, statistical analysis of hurricanes by name. Up until 1979, they were all named female. And after 1979, they were named male and female. And they analyzed hurricanes by name. And then of those that made landfall, they counted up how many deaths came from each. And hurricanes with male names or masculine sounding names killed 11 people. Hurricanes with female names or female sounding names, feminine names, killed 59 people. It's a statistic fact. And I published that today and I tweeted that out today. And I said to people, this is not a joke. I'm not making a joke. This is statistically real. And then I gave them the statistic. And at the end, I said, now you can make all the jokes you want, but this is a fact. And everybody thought I was making a joke. And I'm just like,
it sounds true to be a joke to me, though, yeah.
How many times do I have to say this is not actually a joke?
It sounds like a joke.
It sounds like a joke.
It has the structure of a joke.
But it's actually a bizarre truth.
You're right. And they alternate starting with men and women's names every year. So it's very interesting. I'd like to see how long that trend continues. It's going to take a long time to catch up unless we have a very bad hurricane, too.
So, by the way, folks, you may have heard a third voice. So I'm hoping you've heard a third voice unless there's something really bad going on. Oh, but I didn't tell you, John, I have become dangerously insouciant about getting prepared for this show.
Oh, hang on. I need to Google the definition of insouciant. Be right back.
Back when we were doing...
laid back in French, really.
Back when we were doing this show on Google Hangouts, we were always nervous before every show, trying to get everything set up. You know, I had literally a list of like 6 different steps I had to take just to make sure nothing broke before the show went on. But now that we are on a more or less robust platform, I literally caught myself this morning thinking about whether or not I wanted to do some extra like troubleshooting just to make sure something was going to work. And I just thought, nah, it'll work. I don't even care.
Oh boy.
And guess what? It worked.
It worked.
I didn't even have to worry about it.
Well, yeah, that's part of the general move away from Google. People are moving away. I mean, the 2 things going on. One, all the best stuff Google turns off, right? And then there's much more robust tools available once you leave the Google ecosphere. So,
yeah, it's a shame they've dominated so much of the market and a lot of tools. This is the best thing ever. Do you listen to the show much? I explained this when we first switched to the new Streamlabs, which was when I've lost my train of thought. I've completely lost my train of thought. We switched from Google Hangouts to Streamlabs, and before we switched over, I was thinking, Well, YouTube's probably got public APIs for all of this stuff. If we can't use Google Hangouts on air, we'll just I'll just write a little something that'll allow us to broadcast directly to our YouTube channel. We've got the stream keys. It's just a character string, and we'll do that. This would be a nice project for me. And maybe I'll do a little web interface or something like that. And I was talking to someone else who does some live streams, who's been on the show a few times. He says, "Oh yeah, I use Streamlabs. It's great." And I open it up, I log on, and I look at it, and I go, "Yep, it's exactly what I would have written, only better. Great."
Anyways, what I was trying to say before I got sidetracked somewhere. I got sidetracked so far back, I don't even remember where I got sidetracked.
See, it's like the D&D game. That's a sign of a good show. Is it? I'm asserting it at any rate.
You may have heard a third voice on the show. That comes from today's guest. We have a guest on the show. Shock!
I love guests. They're great.
Especially me.
Yeah. I welcome back, Rick Stump. It's been, I don't know, a year or two.
Yeah, about 18 months, I think. Sounds right.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Has it already been 18 months?
I think it has been. Feels right.
I mean, that's okay. I believe you.
We've been doing this for a while.
Yeah, I've been.
How does that make you feel, Daddy Warpig?
It makes me feel like I'm losing my memory. It makes me feel like I'm going Joe Biden. I don't know, man. I can't make that joke. That's my own law. That's my own rule.
Yeah, you broke the no politics rule.
Oh,
See, you're forgetting things.
Yeah, I'm forgetting things, apparently. I can't be expected to remember every single
thing.
Word that I want to end a sentence with. That's just crazy. No, welcome back to the show, Rick.
Thanks.
Once again, and I want to remind this to folks. I don't know if Ardenon is listening to the show today, but Ardenon jumped in on MeWe, grabbed a bunch of people and said, "Hey, all you people better, or all you people should come on Geek Gab." And I was like, "Sure, that sounds great to me."
Yep, sounds wonderful.
And the first two were Mike DiBaggio and Shel Presto last week, and then this week it's Rick Stump. And at some point in the future, we're hoping to have Sky Hernstrom back on the show, and maybe some of the other people who are on the book he's been writing with, which includes Jeffro. So having Sky and Jeffro and some of the other authors on the show at the same time, that'd just be. I think John Mollison was also in that crew.
Mm-hmm. He's in there. Yeah.
Yep.
So wait, do you guys know who the other one? There was 4 of them. Who's the other one?
It was Jeffro, Hernstrom, Mollison, and your mom.
Thank you. That's just the kind of helpful, friendly information we were expecting.
Geek Gab, you're here for the highbrow humor.
So, anyways, if we can get that show lined up sometime before or after the Wolfenstein thing, that'll be cool. That'll be a whole bunch of awesome packed into one show. This week we have a whole bunch of different awesome packed into the show. And I want to start with the thing I'm most interested about, and I can do that because
it's your show.
Yeah, I'm a host. That's one of the little privileges of being a host. You're making something that's an officially licensed Hero System thing.
Mm-hmm. It is. I got a hold of Hero. Well, I'll throw it back further. I started playing Hero back when it first came out, and was part of a Champions game in '85 that lasted through '87, and been playing ever since. The kids and I have been running one, as some of the audience know, but I'll fill you in. I've got 5 sons, and the 4 oldest have been, role playing with me for, goodness gracious, 12 years or more.
Wow.
And we started something I just called the Atlantaverse for them and a bunch of their friends from school and church and wherever, where we'd have all these teens rotating in. I think we had a total of 14 players, each with 2 characters. And different settings, we start rotating them in. I came up with my own background, own setting, own origin of powers. The stuff you do when you're playing Champions. Excuse me. And about a year and a half ago, I approached Hero with an outline for making a setting book for Hero, and they licensed me right up. They were very, very gracious about it. So we've got contracts back and forth. It's all fully licensed. And I'm hoping, and the license is good for more than one, we're going to be putting out the basic, what I call the Atlantaverse setting book, hopefully within the year, including art. That should include about 25 NPCs, settings. We're looking at about probably 120 to 140 pages, not counting character sheets.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We're going to get some art put in there. We're getting some good help from artists around the country. And then we're going to do settings, because the campaign itself has got distinct settings. We've got one group of people playing in 1930. They're currently in 1930, where they're interacting with pulp heroes. And we've got one that is about to kick off that's set in 1950s, where they're doing Commie Smashers. And then we've got one set in the official setting of Hudson City, one set in the official setting of Abora Bay, and then one set in Atlanta, which is, of course, a reimagined Atlanta. So we really hope, and when the first book hits, Hero and I will talk, but we really do hope that over the next 5 years, we'll be putting out about 5 books.
That's fantastic. Are you going just online print on demand, or are you going for the full in retail, in stores?
We're starting off print on demand with the first one, but based on that, we may very well do the whole full print, total print run on the additional ones, and even go back and do the original. We'll see. I've had some people suggest that I go ahead and do a Kickstarter for the first one, but I've got a rule that I'm not going to ever do a Kickstarter until everything's done being written.
Sure.
So once we've got a finished manuscript through 2 layers of editing, I'll consider that again. And we would kickstart to do additional art, and then get it set up for printing and do some print runs. But it's definitely a possibility. But I've actually had some people press me. They want to know if we can get a 6th book out, because, of course, one of the big villains is the Fourth Reich, which seems to be quite popular because I've made a bunch of gadgets for them. And there's even some push from the team to get out another book, because a part of the setting is the Hollow Earth. So sort of a pulp fiction planetary romance setting for it as well.
Wow, it sounds, but it's got everything in it. It doesn't just sound like a Hero game or a Champions game. It sounds like we're going to hit all these different settings.
As the players have pointed out, they the next session may very well have a super-powered luchador fighting Nazis on raptors in the Hollow Earth. Yes, we could have El Azul with his mask throwing down with Nazis with energy rifles, riding giant cybernetic raptors inside the Hollow Earth.
Well, I mean, why not?
Well, I've actually always had a rule when it comes to things like Champions. If you go back and look at the original pulps, the stuff that was coming out in 1930, I started the pulps in 1930 for a reason. The games started the day after the first appearance of the Shadow in real life. If you go back and look at stuff like the Shadow, Doc Savage, anything even before that, 20 years before that, with Edgar S. Burroughs, there is no difference between the genres that we now sort of take for granted. So John Carter, Warlord of Mars, could, yes, very well use telepathy and his radium pistol while riding a giant 9-legged lizard, across the dead seabeds of Mars. It's just a mix-up, and that's okay. And we know for a fact, canonically, in the same universe, you had Carson Napier, who ran into guys who were actual witches, who used spells and magic on Venus. So if you're not going for a full psychotronic experience where literally anything can happen, like your power armor guy is fighting a vampire who's trying to conquer the moon, you're probably not really playing to the utmost that you can do in a setting with a system like Hero, because Hero can do anything.
That's true. I do recall many afternoons spent poring over that giant Hero 5th edition book, seeing what tools I could build with that system.
Yeah, we're trying to dial it back. The players have reached what we call the détente, because we are the sorts of people where we read the rules intensely. But combat was beginning to get to be a mess because all the players are doing, well, I'm going to do a threefold block maneuver, and then I'm going to use my triggered power, so I'm going to do a counter punch. Well, that's fine. He's going to be doing a dive for cover, and then he's at indirect. I mean, because in Hero, you can stack the powers up to such an extent that so you can, like, well, I'm going to roll, do I hit him? You hit him. Do your damage is very possible. At the same time, okay, I'm going to roll to hit him, and then suddenly 15 subsystems kick in. I've got a power that modifies that, and I've got a power, and I've got a trigger on a skill, and it can get very complicated. So we sort of, okay, we'll dial this back so that combat goes faster, but it still goes pretty quick for us.
Oh, I love the idea of the setting. Because I think a lot of people, what you say, it was a mashup. I think it's now considered a mashup. There's, back when people were first reading A Princess of Mars, there was no concept of these genres being mashed up. It's only nowadays that we look back and we say, that's weird. We usually sort of leave our dinosaurs with the dinosaurs and our psychic Nazis with the psychic Nazis, and the witches are in another book.
Right. But if you're doing old school pulp or even old school superheroes, because remember, canonically, inside the Marvel Universe, the greatest threat to the Avengers in 1972 was Dracula.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I mean, as he would be. Dracula's a tough customer.
He was a tough customer. It was a huge story arc inside Marvel Comics in the 70s was how do all the superheroes team up with Doctor Strange to stop Dracula from conquering the world? So, for some of the listeners, that's, oh, well, it's the 1970s, but that's well within my lifetime. And I remember buying those comics when they were new, when I was a very young boy. So, the crossover has always been there. And I think that it helps when you do that. As a matter of fact, that's very much a part of my D&D play, my D&D style. The very first villain in my setting, my campaign for D&D, and the campaign turns 41 years old in August, by the way.
Wow.
The very first big villain was a dwarven wizard from Jotunheim who had a steam-powered warhorse, and his main weapon was basically a flintlock that was powered by steam. So, do the same sort of things.
That's awesome. And you also mentioned the hero system itself. So if I suppose if I'm new to Champions, I wouldn't care. But I have a surface familiarity with the hero system and Champions. As I said, I've messed with the tools before. It seems to me, and this is just my opinion, that when you do a Champions or a Heroes game, you need to take that big Bible or whatever of rule set, and really you use that system and you pick and choose the tools that you want for your game and cut everything else out.
The simplest, easiest thing to do, especially if you're new to it. I know that a lot of people that are coming from other tabletop systems are often overwhelmed by Hero. Something I hear again and again is there's so much math.
Right.
And there's a lot of
Don't
math.
make me divide things. Come on.
There's a lot of math, and after a while you memorize all the powers of 2 up to 2 to the 12th power if you're doing it old school. And that's true. There's a lot of math, but there doesn't have to be a lot of math. It can be stripped down and just tell people, here's some points, keep it simple, and you can easily have a wonderful hero who is tough, strong, and can fly. The end. Right.
It sounds like it's a rule set that you give to the game master and not the players. You don't give the players the hero system rulebook and say make Wolverine, right? You say this is the subset of game we're playing, and this is all you need to know to make a hero.
Well, let me tell you an anecdote that I've got. I've actually got this as an article on my blog. Way back when I was a young soldier and I was traveling from Texas to North Carolina via Greyhound. And I had sent all my gear ahead, so I had just my clothes and some cash on me in a Greyhound bus. And I ran into a young kid who was also traveling to Fort Bragg, and a young girl, about 16, and her grandmother, and that she was going to visit her father at Fort Bragg. So we're going to be stuck in this bus a long time. And they were bored out of their minds and asked what games do you play? And I mentioned, well, I just finished, because I was going through a notebook. I said, this is a superhero, and I explained it to him. So we spent 2 days on the bus playing Champions with no rule books. Right. The girl described the hero she wanted. I figured out the stats from memory. The guy described the hero he wanted, figured out the stats from memory. He had a roll of dimes, and this is an old military tip. We used to carry coins with us for vending machines, but we never carried rolls of quarters because cops would arrest you or confiscate them thinking they were fist loads. So you always carried rolls of dimes. So you had a bunch of dimes, and we could use those to keep track of stun and endurance and the other stats. And then I just tore up a sheet of paper. The young girl had a notebook and a purple pen. And we tore up a sheet of paper and made shit so we could draw numbers. And we played for a couple days. We had a ton of fun. The grandmother had me write down the name of the books and swore she was going to buy them for her granddaughter. And so, you don't need the big tome. You don't need the 7,000 pages of the primary rule books to have a good time playing a superhero game. Because when you get down to brass tacks, it is a very simple resource management game, just like 99% of tabletop games are. So if you just keep track of the stun, endurance, etc., you're going to be fine. And then you can focus on having fun.
That's a great story.
It was a great time.
Speaking of time, you've got a fan in chat. Attention Span Labs wants to know if you have some tips to keep your campaign running for 40 years. That's pretty incredible.
That was a nice segue.
Well, I got to say, I really,
Thanks, man.
I love that Seaward has gone on 41 years. And I think that the two things that I've learned to keep the game going are that you can't maintain the status quo, right? Players have to be able to change things permanently.
Mm.
If they can't change things permanently, then they're not going to want to come back. I think a concrete example of that is in my second edition campaign, which I call Blackstone. There was a huge, overwhelmingly bad guy, Lord Westergoth, the Captain General of all Death Knights in the campaign. So think about the biggest, baddest Death Knight in second edition. Make his boss, and that's this guy.
Okay.
He was meant to be a threat until the guys are into their domain levels, etc. When they were all, when the particular party was, one guy was 7th level, the rest were 6th, they got ambushed by Westergoth, and in a foolish bout of optimism, as Dungeon Master, his thinking was they had hidden something he needed. He was going to kill 1 or 2 of them and then take 1 or 2 of them captive and force the party to give it back to him, and then he'd release them because he's got honor of a sort. And it'd be a demonstration of how dangerous he was. It would set them back. It would add a new quest, etc. Well, they got enough of an idea that he was coming that this 6th level party beat him.
Nice.
Out of the blue. It wasn't easy. They still talk about it 5 years later. It was a massive thing, but they actually got him. And like one person, and I was talking to somebody about it, and this is, I swear, back in the Google Plus days, like, well, now you have to make, a new Captain General of the Death Knights to continue the plot. I'm like, no, I can't do that. They killed the guy, right? Everything's got to change. You've got to change everything. If your plot currently is the Queen of all dragons is going to do X, Y, and Z, and in 5 years she's going to conquer such and such, and the players come in and kill her, you can't replace her with a new Queen of the Dragons that's going to do X, Y, and Z, etc. Because you just wipe out the success of the party. And I think that's the biggest advice I have, to let things go forward. Let them change stuff and let the changes stick.
Wow.
I know what I'm going to do, and this is the same group of crazy jerks. I had them in the Howling Wilderness, and they went to this creepy lighthouse that's a couple hundred yards off the shore in the ocean on this tiny spit of rock in an inhospitable, horrible, dangerous area. And they go in and they get some treasure, and the party says, "Now we're going to move in."
Love it.
Now we're going to get to the punchline in a minute. These guys are second level, and they're like, "We're going to move in," and they make it work. They hide a lot. They move up, and this is where it gets funny as well. On the third floor, there was a wizard locked door they couldn't open. I'm like, okay. Fast forward 5 real years. 5 real years. These guys are now much higher level. And they started asking, why do bad guys keep coming to the lighthouse and attacking us? It doesn't make any sense. We're in the middle of nowhere. And the reply was, "Oh, we'll figure it out later." Another real year later. Another one. They're like, what's behind that door? Yeah, I don't know. 6 months later. We got that spell, that scroll that with a high level dispel magic. Let's see what's behind that door. We open it up, and remember Lord Westergoth? It's his missing sword, an artifact level evil sword. My original plan was they were going to see this lighthouse, they'd leave, they'd adventure for years and years, and eventually clues would lead them back here. And they're like, "Oh yeah, I was here once." No, they moved in. And they promptly ignored this locked door for 6.5 real years.
Real years. That's amazing.
Kept mentioning it.
No, sorry, I didn't prepare Dispel Magic today. I'm too busy.
We're just gonna blow it off until I'm a teenager. It went from the timeline was so bad that my oldest son wasn't a teenager, and then when they finally did it, he was graduating college and had a job. So that was fun, and the thing is it worked out great. And you have to let them change. Seaward itself started off as a town and a bay nearby where pirates hid, and a good guy wizard in a tower where you learn spells. Now it's a sprawling map, but the vast majority of it is you've got the Duchy of Timberlake, which is where a player character hit 9th level, right? And made a domain. You got Adrian, character hit 10th level, made a domain. You've got a Cull, guy hit 9th level, he made a domain. You've got the rival city of Greenbow, a guy made 9th level and made a domain. The other kingdoms, with one exception, all the other kingdoms are over the 4 years people have leveled up. Right, and they've either joined the NPC king, or they've made their own countries across the mountains, or whatever. And that growth has been very organic, and it sticks because the creativity of 20 or 30 people is always going to be better than whatever I can make up in my head by myself. So that's a really long way to talk about let the players make a difference. Is what I think is the secret to a long-running campaign.
Well, those are great examples.
And keep good notes. Keep very good notes.
Keep very good notes. I was actually going to ask, do you have any more nuts and bolts, day-to-day practical stuff, practical advice?
There's a couple things that I do. One, I take very careful notes. I've actually, again, on my blog, I've got something called my NPC box, and that's actually getting digital now. But for years and years, I kept. Remember those 3x5 card file boxes you had way back in the day in elementary school, high school stuff? I had.
Sure.
I've got 12 of those, and I think I've got 1,400 3x5 cards. Whenever I would make an NPC, right, I would write out the details of the NPC and then keep track of which PCs and NPCs they'd met and when they'd met them. right? And I kept them organized in boxes like by town and city or alliance or whatever. I'm actually now using a customer relationship management tool, a CRM tool, to digitize all that, but I'm treating it's the same thing. So if you go to, for example, in the Kingdom of Seaward, if you go to the town of Old Bridge, there is an inn there called the Sad Puppy. And I named that inn in 1982, so it has nothing to do with anything contemporary. And you go in there, and there's a bartender and there's a waitress, and I have these cards from 1982. Now they're digital with their names and who they've met, who they know, etc. And so that's one of the things I do. So I'll go through, and every now and then what NPCs what's going on with NPCs? What are they doing? With primary guys, I actually make a what I call a project list now. For example, Boz, the bartender, who they recently killed, was a villain in the game for years. They just didn't know it. They go to the local pub, they spill their secrets, they talk about where they want to go. The bartender is actually a spy. But I'd say, well, what's his goals? What's his steps? Just as if I was making a series of like mentorship for an employee. Well, in 3 years, I want to be doing this. I'm going to do all these steps. And I would have timelines of what they're doing and how they're doing it, decision points. So that's a lot of paperwork. And about once every 2 weeks, I go through and figure out what all the NPCs are doing and who's sending who notes. And it is a fair amount of work. I will warn you.
I was gonna ask. That sounds, not to scare off prospective dungeon masters, but what's the ratio of prep work to game time?
Well, I've been doing it for so long now that my ratio is only about 2 hours per session, 2 hours of prep per session.
Mm-hmm.
And I can do a lot of it on the fly, just off the top of my head because I got this stuff digital. And another thing too is I keep notes in areas. I think my favorite was, there's two of my favorites. One, not too long ago, my oldest son was running a group, and they went in and they were going overland between someplace called Brownie Hill and Dwarf Hill. And they stopped, and I said, oh, by the way, behind this fallen log, you find 2,000 copper pieces. It's like, oh, that's weird. About an hour later, he goes, wait a minute, my other character dumped those because he was over encumbered. Yeah. That was 12 years ago. Yeah. Yeah, you were here. Another character was here 12 years ago. They were over encumbered, so he hit 2,000 copper pieces behind that log. You've got to write that stuff down. But that means, of course, you do things like inside Skull Mountain, which is, like, I guess you can now call it a mega dungeon. I always just call it my super dungeon. You'll find the remains of other party members, other PCs from ages past.
That's cool. Normally when you do a dungeon like that or a big place, when you first create it, you seed it with, maybe you put another NPC party on the Wandering Monster table.
Sure.
And of course you're going to have remains of NPCs and their treasures to be claimed if the party dares. But when you run a game for that long, you no longer have to do that, because that was your elf from 15 years ago. I don't know why you rolled an elf, but he's there. You can claim his sword and gold if you want, because nobody else has been here.
Yeah, your aunt died here once. That's yeah, and it does add up. And then same thing in the dungeon. My dungeon that I call Skull Mountain just had the players got together and added their own level to the dungeon. Right. The current crop of players used elemental summonings and a bunch of favors from dwarves and magic items, and they off to the side dug in their own level with secret access to the levels they want to have access to, and outside entrance, etc., to make it easier for them to stage raids in the dungeon. They're all done. We sat down talking, and they found out they were the fourth party to add a level to the dungeon. Right. And that they'd been to two of the levels that other people had added to the dungeon. And that matters. That builds up. Actually, one of the big scary NPCs in the campaign is the only surviving henchman from a party from 1984. You get a lot of, there's a lot of accumulated lore. So another thing I do is about every 10 years, I go clean stuff out and look for inconsistencies and fix a few things here and there, that sort of stuff.
I love it. The value of the story is such that something like 90% of games don't get past the first session, and you're casually like, every 10 years I clean up some of this. I gotta straighten out my notes and flatten out some of these inconsistencies.
I have I have one of those 4-level IKEA bookshelves. You know what I'm talking about? They're about shoulder high on a grown man, and it's just my notebooks from the campaign.
Wow.
Spiral notebooks and campaign, roughly chronological order. I've got about 8 or 9 that are in what I call current rotation on notes, and that's not counting the Skull Mountain stuff. That's another set of 4. I've got I think 50 gigs worth of images, files, maps, etc. So it builds up.
Yeah, I imagine.
I don't want it to sound that intimidating though, because
it's over time. It's not.
Yeah, I didn't sit down and write this at once.
Sure, it's an impressive accumulation.
Yeah, and it's led to some things like my oldest son took my old notes from. He's studying linguistics. He took my notes from the 80s and 90s, and he's been working on constructed languages for the dwarves and elves and gnomes, goblins and hobgoblins, orcs.
Naturally,
of course, So we're kind of our own syntax and language structures, and it just grows and grows, and hopefully it won't go away.
That's great.
Yeah.
What time do you reckon we'll get a cinematic universe?
Well, actually, it's interesting. Like I said, not too long ago, I put out the word 4 people asked, and I've been doing a Discord-based run through Skull Mountain, and that's been fun. I might do more of that. I was actually wondering if I might do a session like that once or twice a year, where we do 4 or 5 sessions into Skull Mountain. Frankly, very, very few people make it past the second level in the mountain. Lou Pulser, the game designer, and I played together for many years. He would run me in his Tanilda campaign. I'd run him in my Seaward campaign, and he called level 2 the filter.
Skull Mountain. And now I'm not as much of an old grognard as I sound. Can you tell me more about what that is?
Well, sure. It started off there was in one of the basic books. They had an interesting drawing of the stone mountain, and it had a skull on top. I'm like, I'm just going to steal that, right? I did, and started adding levels, this, that, and the other. But basically, inside the campaign, there is an area in the wilderness where it's 4 to 7 days through the wilderness to just get to it, where there's a climb up to the top of a mountain on a plateau, and there's just a dungeon, and the dungeon goes. Well, let me put it this way. My 4th son, Nicholas, says that after playing in this campaign for more than half of his life, he's convinced that everything is technically in Skull Mountain, including the oceans, the moons, and the cities. But just to give you a spoiler, there is indeed a place they have found where if you can breathe water or hold your breath for 20 minutes, you can swim down into a lake in Skull Mountain, and you will surface on a lake on the 3rd moon. So
that's amazing.
It goes everywhere.
It goes everywhere. It's sort of like the fictional TV universe.
Yeah. It's just something that accumulate over time. Start off with a couple levels now. I think that what I call the main stack is 14 levels, and then the eastern tunnels, for example, go 95 miles, and that's all mapped out. I have far too much time on my hands. No, but it's just been a fun time all these years, and it's led to a lot of growth. As things went on, and I started changing things. AD&D First Edition was always my preferred system, and eventually, my house rules, which actually the Far Realms thing, the image that you guys used when you were pitching this, that Far Realms, that's about 1/4 of the house rules that I use for AD&D First Edition and Seaward. And what I'm working on now is I'm working on turning that into its own standalone OSR. clone of first edition.
Oh, sure. If you've got so many house rules on top of it, you might as well go all the way. And
yeah, so I've been working on that for a while. It's coming along. I'm actually in the horrible grunt work of, okay, let's write up all the spells. Let's write up all the equipment. That's where we're just foot slugging. But I've been working on that about a year now, I think, DW. It's been about right? About a year. And turning, notes into a coherent game where I'm also making it so you don't need to use any other rules so you can play the game. It has been fun. I'm even putting in mass combat rules so that you can do army on army fighting using the same rule book. We're playtesting those tomorrow, as a matter of fact.
Oh, cool.
We've had them for a long time. We're just getting them neatened up for, people outside the family and outside the team to use. But yeah, the OSR clone I'm working on, the tentative name is Old School by Rick, Crusaders and Catacombs.
Cool.
Contact is we're at 24 character classes.
Wow.
About 8 or 9 of which are for NPCs only, and 10 races, 3 of which are NPC only. So,
you said it's sort of house ruled AD&D, so is it sort of a standard array of D&D style classes and races, or have you gone?
Sure. I mean, the way it works is we've got the warrior. Like, here's an example: you've got dwarves, elves, gnomes, halflings, half elves, half orcs, and humans are the playable races. And then the NPC races, they basically, when I say NPC, you're going to run into them in villages and as henchmen. That stuff are Selkie, which are semi-humans like half elves or half orcs that can hold their breath for extended periods of time and are comfortable in the water. And we've got the fairy, which are smaller, more magical elves, and half ogres, which are big, bad, stupid looking, and then the player character races include the barbarian, the nobleman, and the soldier, and the NPC races for NPC classes, I should say, for warriors are the courtier and the man-at-arms. So I really made the NPC races because there was a problem that I ran into, and that was if you have very few non-player characters with levels, the players become overwhelmingly powerful very quickly. And then a lot of things don't make sense, like the encounter charts in the back of the DMG. But if you have plenty of NPCs with character classes, the player characters are almost never going to matter. I think that I spent almost 6 months talking about this incessantly on my blog about what happened. So what I did was I came up with a group of NPC classes where they're a lot better than 0 level something, but they won't compete with PCs. So you can have patrols with a bunch of 3rd level guys and an 8th level leader, but it still matters that the PCs are 3rd level or 8th level. So
that's fair. Just sort of to give that, what's the word, verisimilitude when
right. There has to be a verisimilitude. I mean, it's a game about dragons and elves and talking swords, yes, but I want to have it internally consistent.
Sure. The sort of thing problem that's solved in video games by making the town guards unstoppable killing machines.
Right.
So that you don't attack the guards, right?
Yeah, on the one hand, you kind of want every village to have a cleric type, at the local parish or church or whatever, who can do things like help out the village, maybe a hedge mage at every other village, that sort of stuff. But if you put a magic user and cleric in every village, pretty soon your clerics and your magic users are worthless. So I made the hedge mage, right, which is a low rent version of the magic user, and I made the religious brother or sister, who is much more about healing and getting rid of fevers than it is about fighting and casting combat spells. And that solved a massive problem of, I've got 1,400 villages, just an example, and I've got 8 clerics. Who the heck is doing marriages? What's going on here? So we did a lot of that, and that's in the new rule book, along with the mass combat spells, a bunch of mass combat rules, a bunch of spells, different armor. I never liked the armor in the original book, that sort of stuff.
Sure, I gotta admit, I got my start with 2nd edition, so The first edition stuff is a little foreign to me. It's been years since I played second edition, though.
Second edition is fun. It's my wife's favorite version. The Blackstone campaign is second edition skills and powers, where I've got a tight lock on what's allowed.
Oh yeah, yeah. That book was that book had good stuff.
Not designed to be, it's not. Oh yeah, use everything. It's pick what you're going to use and stick to your guns. We've got the whole series of that, and we've been running that for 17 years now. So yeah, that's my short campaign is 17 years.
Fantastic.
And no, but it's fun. I'll probably put out some stuff for Blackstone in the future someday too.
We are almost out of time.
Oh my goodness!
Isn't it crazy? I told you I could talk about anything all day. I warned you.
Oh, it's great. Just like last time, it's good getting insight into what it takes to really. I think there's a lot of people, and it might be intimidating for a lot of people. And I know I'm starting to ramble, but there's a lot of people who don't get into game mastering because of stories like yours or the success of a show like Critical Role.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's important to stress that what you've done is just based on consistency.
Mm-hmm.
The advice that you gave earlier, and I mean, not in small part, actually raising some kids who want to play with you. That seems to be a big help.
I'm accused of having a large family, not because I'm Catholic, but because I needed trapped players to keep my
exactly. Like, no, Daddy. Son, the family that plays together stays together. Oh no, I don't want.
Well, actually, the funny thing is my fourth son, Nicholas. Well, actually, Dad, I'm not a real big fan of house rules. The rules as written are just fine.
All right, he's been reading Jeffro too much on.
Probably the other way around. He's been that way since he was 6 or 7 years old. So, yeah, he's a grognard. He's a 17-year-old grognard. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, that's great, but definitely that was really interesting to hear. Good advice on what it takes to keep a campaign going for a long time, and I will hope for the best for the Hero System game you're putting out.
You guys updated. We're going to be doing some sneak peeks online so people can give me feedback here in the next couple of weeks. So watch my MeWe feed and maybe check out the Discord. We'll be doing some stuff there too.
Why don't you send us the MeWe feed link after the show, and I'll make sure that it's in the show notes.
Yep, DW's got it. He can get it to you as well. And you guys are on the Discord, so feel free to share that stuff out.
Well, that was fun. Thanks for coming back on.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, guys.
Do you have anything else you want to say?
Just thanks for having me, and I look forward. We should do this again in 6-7 months.
Of course.
Yeah, I'm especially looking forward. Definitely want to do this again when it gets close to the Kickstarters for any one of this stuff.
Absolutely. When we start getting closer to actual getting it out, we'll definitely have to do another one of these and get some feedback. Well, thanks again, guys. Really appreciate your time.
For sure. Daddy Warpig, any last questions or words for everybody?
I think that's my line.
Oh, yeah. My mistake. I thought of that. I'm like, wait, I'm not doing the exit. I'm
again.
Well, I've already thanked our guests. Thank you for being a wonderful co-host. It was great to see some new faces in the chat. Matthew Martin, Judd Goswick in particular have been hanging out. They must be old fans of yours, Rick. But it's been great. Thanks for the show, and my inimitable co-host Eddie Warpig.
I will say that Rick has a blog we'll stick the link to in the description called Don't Split the Party. There's some really, really great articles on that blog.
I'll start writing it here real soon once I get through this chapter on spells in the clone book, Mercy.
One of the best articles, or at least one of the ones I loved the most, was the one on spells in first edition, scrying spells, and psychic abilities and how those interacted. And it's just phenomenal. We kind of discussed it way long ago with Jeff Rowe and Alex at Kursova. But yeah, I loved a lot of the stuff I've read on this blog. I only say a lot because I haven't read everything on this blog, but everything I have read, I've loved. So we'll put the link back in the description, and I urge you guys to go check it out. I'm trying to think. That's pretty much all I have to say. I want to thank everybody who listened live. I want to thank everybody who's going to check out the show later. You can catch the show live just about every week. Oh, yeah, just about this time. Folks, so a note on next week's show. I'm going in for major surgery on Monday. Full anesthetic, cut me open, chop me up, sew me back up surgery. And although I'm supposed to be able to return to normal, like, workish activities within a few days, so it's possible I'll be able to do next week's show. There's no guarantee. If there's any way I can, I'd love to come on and do a show next week. If not, well, then we'll be skipping next week's show, and hopefully we'll be ready to go in 2 weeks. So, yeah.
Prayers for you,
man. Thank you very much. I've done the show in worse conditions, but not much. So if we're not here next week, you'll know why. It's because I have a legitimate medical situation going on that I just can't get over with. But hopefully we'll be able to do the show, and maybe I'll even be talking about Wolfenstein, and if not, we'll come up with something else to discuss.
At the last minute.
At the last minute, of course, because that's how we do. So we want to thank everyone who's listening live. We want to thank everyone who's going to tune in later. We're here about every week at this time. You can catch us on youtube.com/geekgab. That's youtube.com/geekgab. Or you can catch us on the Google Play Store. You can catch us on soundcloud.com or on the Apple iTunes Store. Subscribe to us on any of those feeds. You can listen to us on the device of your choice. We are signing out for today, folks. But don't you worry. Don't you fret. We will be back.